So hello everyone and welcome to the SUSECON session dedicated to the patch management of disconnected environments using SUSE Manager. So we'll start this session by exploring the context and requirements of secured disconnected environments. Then we'll move on to the architecture section where we'll describe the differences between standard and disconnected deployments. Next, I introduce you the synchronization process and we will end up with a small demo. But before we start, a few words on the speakers. Hello, I'm Benoit Loriot. I've been a sales engineer at SUSE for almost 3 years, and it's with great pleasure that I am presenting this session today with Antoine.
Hello, so I'm Antoine Pierre, helping our customers for more than 6 years now, working in the EMEA consulting team. And we developed this solution together with Benoit, and we will explain how everything works together and connects together.
Thank you. So let's begin. And Antoine, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So first of all, we thought it was a good idea to start where it all started for us, with a customer coming with a problem, with requirements they needed to meet, and with a very specific context. So we will cover the basics of the solution deployed, and then we will explain the solution itself. So basically, the customer came with a few requirements. The main one was how to patch multiple Linux systems, Debian, CentOS, Ubuntu, SLES, in order to have fully update environments in their configuration. Then they want to be able to push configuration files or manage services. So they need a tool to do that as well. And the tool needs to be a single pane of glass, just one access point to manage the configuration and patch the Linux. And of course, everything needed to be secured, up to date. Even the server we will deploy, and that will be part of the solution, they need to be up to date as well, but in a fully disconnected environment without internet access. And the last one, customer is requiring to have all the data going through what they call a white station, which is basically a chip deep scanning computer that will browse all the data you put on before being able to connect it to computers in the network. So let me just explain a few basics of the solution we developed with Benoit. The first one is the RMT, the repository mirroring tool. Both tools are what we call core SUSE tools, and the RMT just help you using a command line interface to mirror repositories for SLES and all the belonging modules. And SUSE Manager is the improved version of that, and it's basically a dashboard to synchronize a lot of different Linux OSs, and manage configuration using a dashboard. So basically, let me explain what is the process we've been through and what are all the questions we had to answer. So the first one, of course, as I was saying, is how to patch our customer Linux OSs. And the answer to that is SUSE Manager. But then another question came, how to do that without an internet connection and without internet access? The answer to that is having a disconnected setup with SUSE Manager. After that, the third question is how to effectively deploy and patch the disconnected SUSE Manager. And in order to do that, you need a disconnected RMT, where the SUMA will be connected to get its own patches and own updates. But then the question is, how do you feed data in your disconnected RMT? You need a connected RMT that will access the internet and where you will be able to export the content for then being able to import it internally. Then the next question is how to deploy and patch these disconnected RMT. And to do that, Same answer as the second question, to have a disconnected SUMA where your RMT will be registered and where it could get its updates and patches. And last but not least, how do you feed the data in your disconnected SUMA? You need a connected SUMA that will access the internet and that will synchronize the CentOS, Debian, Ubuntu, and SLES content. And then you will need to export the data and import internally. So basically, that's how everything has been thought with Benoit, and now we will see how everything is interacting. So first, we will start with the standard deployment architecture, and then we will go through what we did with the customer. So the standard deployment is very simple. On the left, you see the internet, where you will have access to the update and patches for all your Linux OSs. And then on the right, in your internal network, you will have a SUSE Manager deployed, where it will mirror all the content, and you will be able to provide this content to your Debian, CentOS, Ubuntu, and SLES client. And also, if you have internal repo, you will be able to get the URL, paste it in the SUMA, and it will synchronize everything for you. But the problem is, for this customer, we couldn't have the connectivity from SUSE Manager to the external world. It wasn't possible. So what we developed with Benoit is what we call a disconnected setup. And basically, for the same need, but with a completely disconnected environment, we will show you what we did. So on the left, still the internet with the repo you need to access, and on the right, your internal network with your clients. So first step, you need to have a main SUSE Manager, the internal SUSE Manager, where your clients will be registered to access the content. But how do you deploy your SUSE Manager? For that, you need an internal RMT on top of it. But how do you feed data in this RMT? You need, of course, what I explained before, an external RMT that will connect to the internet. You will export the content and import it in the internal RMT. And the last question is, how do you feed data in the internal SUSE Manager? You need an external SUSE Manager, and same process, you will have to export the content and import it again in the internal SUSE Manager. So now that we explained that, maybe we will see with Benoit what is the tool used for exporting and importing the content.
Sure. So we talked about exporting and importing contents, but let's see the differences between the tools we were using before and the tools that we'll be presenting today. So let's cover key differences between inter-server synchronization version 1 and version 2. So in ISS v1, inter-server synchronization version 1, we have this notion of master and slave, where the SUSE Manager acting as slave will sync from the master 1. And with the version 2 implementation, we removed the master-slave notion. So contents can now be exported and imported in any direction between any SUSE Manager server. While with version 2, with version 1, sorry, we needed an active network connection between the master and slave. It is not required anymore. And as Antoine explained, we can export content from one SUSE Manager and import it into another one, which could be totally off the grid in an isolated and secured environment. So that's really a truly disconnected setup. Another point worth mentioning is the setup phase, which is greatly simplified, so no more configuration needed in the user interface or CA certificates to copy, only one command to export and one command to import on the other side. One last thing, keep in mind, there are some prerequisites to the new approach. So the source and target SUMA servers, they need to be on the same version, and the organizations on both sides should have the same name. So let's move on. We talked about exporting and importing content, but what content exactly? For the moment, ISS version 2 can synchronize software channels, configuration, and state channels. In future releases, we plan to add synchronization of images that can be Kiwi or Docker images, and the team is also working on performance optimization. So that said, let's go for a quick demo. So a few words on the demo setup. I've installed two SUSE Manager servers. You can see Suma 02 and Suma 03. We'll export channels from Suma 2, which is my external SUSE Manager, and import this into Suma 3, acting as the internal SUSE Manager. We'll do all that with the inter-server sync command. So let's first verify that this is installed on both systems. So it's installed on Suma 2 and Suma 3. Good. So on my external SUSE Manager, Suma 2, I have channels that are already synchronized. So we can see here, let's try for the base channel, that I have synchronized CentOS, Debian, RHEL, and Ubuntu base channels, and I can also list all the child channels here. So for this demo, we will export the Ubuntu channels, and the command for this is inter-server sync export, which takes different parameters. So let's check that. So the inter-server sync command will enable us to export channels specifying only the base channel, so channel with children. We can also specify all the different channels by selecting this channels parameter. So that's for software channels, but we can also export state or config channels. What else? We will choose the location of the exported content via the output dir parameter. You can also have the option to export packages added or modified after a specified date. So this is quite handy if you plan to sync content every week, for example, and you don't want to export the full content each time, but rather just have, let's say, the content since the last export. So from that, let's export all Ubuntu software channels. We'll use this command. Let's explain it. So we have inter-server sync export. So we'll export in export Ubuntu directory, and we have chosen to select all Ubuntu channels here. So let's maybe wait a bit because the export for Ubuntu is about 80 gigs, so it will take a bit of time to export. Once it's done, you will need to transfer the exported data to the internal SUSE Manager. So you will do that by maybe copying the export Ubuntu folder into a drive, an external drive that you will plug into the internal SUSE Manager server. Or if you happen to have a secured SSH connection between the two nodes, you can also use tools like rsync to synchronize the directory. So I'm on Suma 3, the internal SUSE Manager, and you can see that I copied the export directory here. So you can see the content. I have the packages, I have the list of the channels exported, and I have a SQL script to import everything into the database. So just a reminder, it's a brand new SUSE Manager server, so I don't have any software channel configured. So let's check that. I need my credentials here. You can see it's empty. I don't have base channel. Obviously, I don't have child channels. So let's import the Ubuntu channels we've exported before on the connected SUSE Manager. So same as before, inter-server sync command with the import flag and the import dir. So we specify where we've placed the exported files. So let's execute that. The import process will take a bit of time, so we will obviously fast forward again and see you once it's done. So now we can see that the import process is now complete. Here, command completed. I've taken a bit of an advance on the commands to just skip timely operations. So we can see now that I have Ubuntu software present on the system. So I have a base channel for Ubuntu and I have child channels. I've taken chance to create a Bootstrap repo for Ubuntu. It has copied all the required packages. And so now it can be interested maybe to register a new Ubuntu systems. So first, let's move into the interface. You can see here that I'm on the internal SUSE Manager. On this internal SUSE Manager, I can see as stated in the command line that I have Ubuntu software. I have created an activation key. So here I've created an Ubuntu activation key, which is named labeled Ubuntu 2004. It points to the base channel Ubuntu we've imported. And I've also created a Bootstrap script to bootstrap my new machines. So here, the Bootstrap script has been downloaded into this repository. So if we go back here, we can edit the Bootstrap script here to match the activation keys we've created. So if I remember well, it will be Ubuntu like that. Let's save it. And now let's go to Ubuntu, where is it? An Ubuntu client system. So we will first download here the Bootstrap script created, and let's execute it. Okay, so now we see the registration process has started. It has downloaded all the required package, started the salt minion, and we should have in the interface a new client talking into the salt section. So here we have a new salt client. We should accept it, and shortly should be able to see this new system up and running into SUSE Manager. So here I can click on it. So it's available here. It will check for the packages installed and see if there are updates very soon. And we can see that I have all the system info on my system already brought up in SUSE Manager. And shortly I will be able to see all the patches that are available and I can start patching my system. So that's it for the demo. Thanks for watching. So thank you. That concludes this session dedicated to patch management of disconnected environments using SUSE Manager. So if you're watching this session at the scheduled time, we're available in the chat room to answer your questions. And if you're watching the replay later, do not hesitate to contact us directly for more information. And thanks again for watching. Antoine, I let you have the last word.